I used to think the quiet meant peace. Now? It just feels like a warning. The kind of quiet that wraps around a house when nothing moves, and everything feels staged. Too clean. Too still. Like the walls are holding their breath, waiting for something to go wrong. That's how it always is when Alistair says he's working late. The kitchen smells like lemon soap, but there's no dinner conversation. Just me, reheating leftovers no one asked for. 2 plates on the table, one for me, one I scrape straight into the trash. He didn't even text tonight. Not a single, sorry, running late. Just silence. Have you ever looked around your own home and felt like you're just a prop in it? Like you're filling a role instead of living a life? Our daughter, Eliana, asked if Daddy would be home for bedtime. I lied. Told her yes. Otto just held out his arms for me to carry him. No questions. That kind of trust breaks your heart when you know you're the only one showing up. I tucked them both in. Kissed their foreheads. Turned off the lights. And then I came back downstairs, poured a glass of wine, and sat in the quiet. Again. Speech balloon, tell me this, have you ever been in a relationship where the silence said more than the words? Where someone's absence became your new normal? Backhand index pointing down, drop your truth in the comments. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own home, like, share, and subscribe. You're not alone. There was a time when I'd wait by the window for Alistair to come home. I'd do my hair. Light candles. Cook dinner that took 3 hours and a YouTube tutorial. Now I just wait for the microwave to beep. We don't fight. We just function. Like 2 people running the same household but living completely separate lives. Polite smiles. Did you grab milk? Where are the car keys? Quick pecks on the cheek that don't even brush skin anymore. The weird part is how normal it all feels now. That quiet space between us used to ache. Now it's just background noise. I used to write poetry. Pages of it. Messy, weird, emotional stuff. Back when I still believed my voice mattered. Now my handwriting only lives on sticky notes, reminders taped to the fridge, soccer snacks for Ellie. Otto's library book due Monday. I became a checklist. A title. A role. Mom. Wife. Reliable. Alistair is everything people envy on paper. Tall, sharp, successful. Always in control. Always dressed like a magazine ad. And somehow, always just out of reach. He doesn't yell. He doesn't cheat, at least not that I can prove. But he also doesn't look at me. Not really. Sometimes I wonder if I disappeared tomorrow, would he even notice? Or would the groceries just stop showing up and the bed stay unmade until someone else took over? The other night, Eliana had a nightmare. She ran into our bedroom crying. I picked her up, held her close, rocked her back to sleep. Alistair never even stirred. I asked him the next morning if he heard her. He blinked like I was speaking another language. When, he asked, pouring coffee like nothing had happened. Later that same day, he missed bedtime again. No call. No check-in. No, tell the kids I love them. I tucked Otto in. He asked if I'd stay for a little while. I curled beside him until his breathing softened. Then I walked back to my room and stared at the ceiling like it owed me answers. Wine helps. Not a lot. But just enough to take the edge off. Funny how you can be surrounded by toys, school calendars, noise, mess, laundry, life, and still feel completely alone. Speech balloon, here's the part one want to know. Have you ever felt more alone lying next to someone than when you were actually by yourself? Backhand index pointing down, say it in the comments. If this feels like your life, even just a little, like, share, and subscribe. You deserve to be seen. It started with a text I didn't expect. Legacy Robles. I hadn't seen her name pop up in over a year. She used to work with Alistair. His right hand at the office, the one he brought along to conferences and board dinners. She was sharp. Always wore red lipstick, never missed a deadline, always knew what Alistair needed before he even asked. He once said, "Legacy's the kind of person who makes life easier." I remember smiling when he said it. But my stomach tightened, just a little. The message was short. "Hey Alistair said I could crash at your place for the night. Flight delays. Everything's booked. I hope that's okay." Alistair said she could crash at my place? He didn't ask me. He didn't even mention it. Just assumed. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I could have said no. But I didn't. Sure. That's fine. That's what I do. I make space. I say yes. I smile. Legacy showed up 2 hours later. The front porch light flickers when she knocks, like the house was warning me. She looked exactly the same. Clean lines, calm confidence, heels that made no sense in the rain. Her hair was slicked back, blazer still crisp after what must have been a hellish travel day. "You look good," she said, stepping inside and brushing water from her shoulders. "So do you," I lied. I was still wearing the same leggings I'd been in since school drop-off. Eliana came running down the stairs, squealing, "Legacy," and jumped right into her arms. Otto followed, slower, sleepier, but smiling. I stood there, watching my kids light up like she was a missing puzzle piece they didn't know they missed. Legacy kissed Ellie's forehead and looked around the house like she'd been here just yesterday. "Everything looks the same," she said. I nodded. "Nothing changes around here." She dropped her bag by the hall bench, pulled off her heels, and padded barefoot into the kitchen like it was hers. "Are you hungry?" I asked. "Starving." I reheated some leftover pasta. We poured 2 glasses of wine. Sat across from each other at the island, the kids already tucked in upstairs. It felt weird. Comfortable. But weird. "Are you still doing the part-time writing gig?" she asked, twirling her fork. I blinked. "Stopped that a while ago." "Why?" I shrugged. "Life." She looked at me for a second too long, like she wanted to say something but didn't. Instead, she just smiled. "You always had a quiet fire. I hope you still have it somewhere." I didn't know how to respond to that. So I sipped my wine and changed the subject. Later that night, I passed by Otto's room. His door was half open. Legacy was inside, kneeling by his bed, whispering something that made him giggle. She pulled the blanket over his legs, smoothed his hair. I should have felt grateful. But something about it made my chest ache. That was the kind of gentleness I hadn't seen in years. And it wasn't coming from the man I married. The rain didn't let up the night Legacy showed up. It wasn't a soft drizzle. It was that sideways, wind-snapping kind of rain that soaks your front mat and makes the house smell like wet leaves. She knocked once and stepped in like she never really left. Same calm energy. Same perfect timing. "It's coming down hard out there," she said, brushing water off her coat. She didn't flinch when lightning cracked somewhere behind her. Just looked around, like the storm was background noise. Legacy had that kind of presence. Like no matter where she went, the room adjusted to her, not the other way around. The kids screamed her name before I could even close the door. Eliana flung herself into her arms like it was Christmas morning. Otto hugged her legs and called her Miss Leggy, like he'd never forgotten her voice. And that's when I realized they hadn't. She'd only been here for a few birthdays, a few sleepovers. But somehow, they remembered her. "You've gotten so big," she said, lifting Otto like it was nothing. "Did you lose a tooth, Ellie?" They laughed. They lit up. They acted like she was a third parent who had just come home from a long trip. And I stood there, soaked from the rain, still holding the door open like a guest in my own house. Dinner happened without much of a plan. Legacy offered to help, and before I knew it, we were both barefoot in the kitchen chopping vegetables and boiling water. The way we moved around each other was easy, too easy. She grabbed the garlic before I even said it out loud. Stirred the sauce without asking. Reached for plates from the right cabinet like she remembered the layout. I don't even know why I remember where everything is, she laughed, brushing hair out of her face. I guess your kitchen stuck with me. I smiled, tight. Hard to forget the place where you ran to my husband. She paused, but just for a second. Yeah, that job was a whirlwind. We didn't say more about it. We didn't need to. After dinner, we sat on the couch, kids curled between us like puzzle pieces finally finding their fit. Legacy read Goodnight Moon in that soothing, low voice that made even me feel sleepy. Eliana kissed her cheek. Otto held her pinky finger like it was a lifeline. When the kids were finally tucked in, Legacy and I ended up back in the kitchen. She poured 2 glasses of wine like it was her house now. Like this was our routine. We leaned against the counter, both barefoot again, rain still tapping the windows like it had nowhere else to go. I forgot how peaceful your place is, she said softly. I stared at my glass. It's not always peaceful. Sometimes it's just empty. She looked at me. Really looked. Not with pity, but with something else. Maybe recognition. Do you ever feel like you became the background character in your own life? I asked, before I could stop myself. Legacy nodded, slowly. Yeah. More than I'd like to admit. And in that moment, I hated how much I didn't hate her. She wasn't trying to steal anything. She just slipped in. Fit too well. Knew too much. And I was starting to wonder if the only reason I noticed was because I'd already left so much of myself behind. It was a small sound. Barely there. But it stopped me cold. I was walking past Otto's room when I heard it, humming. Soft, low, familiar. Legacy's voice. She was tucking him in. The same way I used to. The same tune I used to hum when he was a baby fighting sleep. I hadn't done it in months. Maybe longer. But he remembered. And so did she. I stood in the hallway, back against the wall, listening to her finish the lullaby like she belonged to the moment. Otto's tiny voice mumbled something I couldn't make out, followed by her whisper. I've got you, little man. That's what I used to say. Later that night, it was just the two of us again. Kitchen. Wine. Storm is still flirting with the windows. We didn't talk at first. Just the sound of the wine being poured and the occasional creak of the old fridge. Legacy broke the silence. I didn't leave the company because of a better offer. I glanced up. No? She shook her head. I left because your husband stopped seeing people. He only saw potential. Numbers. Leverage. Everything had to be useful or impressive. Her voice wasn't bitter. Just honest. The kind of honesty that makes your skin tighten a little. And you? I asked. What were you to him? Legacy's lips pulled into something that wasn't quite a smile. I think, at first, I was someone who made him look better. I didn't respond right away. Just stared at the way her finger traced the rim of her wine glass. Have you ever noticed how some people don't really listen to you? They just wait for you to stop talking so they can start, she asked. I nodded slowly. Every day. Something changed in the air right then. Not romantic. Not flirty. Just still. Charged. Like a truth had been spoken out loud and the room hadn't caught up yet. Legacy looked at me, not with pity, but with a softness that made my chest tighten. You're not invisible, Emmalynn, she said. I see you. I've always seen you. That shouldn't have made me feel anything. But it did. I set my wine down. Looked at her for too long. Looked away too fast. There wasn't anything happening. But something had already shifted. And it wasn't Legacy's fault. It was mine. Because I'd spent so long feeling unseen, that being noticed, even gently, even platonically, felt dangerous. She knew too much. Not because she was proud. But because she remembered. She remembered the way Otto liked his blanket tucked under his feet. She remembered the sound I made when I stirred pasta. She remembered how I used to laugh before I started measuring my joy in teaspoons. It didn't hit me all at once. It started like a flicker, a memory I hadn't thought about in years. One of those background moments you never bothered to question, until now. A dinner party. 7 years ago. Back when Legacy still worked for Alistair. The kind of party where everything smelled like money and ambition. I remember catching them in the kitchen. Legacy leaned against the fridge, arms folded. Alistair stood too close, whispering something only she could hear. She laughed. Touched his arm, just for a second. Not flirty. Not exactly. But long enough for my stomach to twist. Back then, I told myself it was nothing. I'd been stressed, tired, insecure. That's what wives do, right? We explain away the unease. We give our husbands the benefit of the doubt because they haven't technically done anything wrong. But now I can't stop replaying it. The closeness. The comfort. The familiarity. Legacy didn't look surprised to see Alistair that close. She looked used to it. The next morning, I found her in Eliana's room. Ellie had woken from a nightmare. I was still groggy when I heard the sobs, but by the time I reached the door, Legacy was already there. She sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing small circles on Ellie's back. Whispering something soothing about clouds and butterflies. Ellie's tiny fingers gripped hers like a lifeline. I stood in the hallway again, watching my child melt into someone else's comfort. Alistair never does that. Never wake up. Never noticed. Not once has he sat on that bed in the middle of the night to hold her until she stopped crying. Not once. Over breakfast, Otto climbed onto Legacy's lap without asking. Eliana asked her to braid her hair for school. You do it better than Mommy, she said, giggling. Legacy didn't correct her. Didn't even glance in my direction. I laughed it off, the kind of laugh that hurts a little more than it should. And that's when it hit me. They weren't excited because Legacy was new. They were calm because she felt familiar. This wasn't a novelty. This was an attachment. She didn't steal her way into this house. She slipped into a space that was already made for her. One I didn't even know was empty. It was around 2 in the morning when I heard the creak of the floorboards. Soft, slow, not the sound of a child. It was heavier than that, but still careful. I slipped out of bed, heart already in my throat. Mother instinct, I guess. When I stepped into the hallway, the light from Otto's room spilled out in a soft yellow glow. Legacy was there. Barefoot. Hair tied up. Wearing one of my old sweatshirts. She was holding Otto, cradled against her like a toddler. His pajama pants were damp. I could smell the faint trace of urine mixed with that innocent, sleepy warmth little kids carry. He'd wet the bed. I moved toward them on instinct, arms already reaching out. Here, I've got him. But Otto turned his face deeper into her neck. Clung tighter. Didn't want to let go. I stopped. Legacy met my eyes. Didn't flinch. Didn't apologize. She just stood there, rocking slightly, like she'd done this before. Like she knew exactly what to do. He came looking for you, she said quietly. But you were sleeping. I didn't want him to cry. The hallway felt smaller. Like the walls were pressing in around us. You're good at this, I whispered. The words came out before I had time to coat them in grace. Legacy blinked. Her voice was calm, level. I've had time to watch and learn. That sentence hit harder than I wanted it to. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't even meant to hurt. But God, it did. Because at that moment, I realized she hadn't just been around for business trips and dinners. She'd been watching. Absorbing. Learning the rhythms of our family like it was a script she was waiting to step into. And now, somehow, she knew the lines better than I did. I turned back into my room and closed the door gently behind me. Sat on the edge of the bed, hands in my lap, the sheets cold beside me. Because of course Alistair still wasn't home. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just sat there, feeling something I couldn't quite name. Not anger. Not sadness. Something heavier. Like the ground underneath me was shifting. Quietly. Permanently. The storm came back that night. Wind pushing against the windows like it wanted to. Rain crawling down the glass in slow streaks. The power flickered, then cut out completely. The whole house blinked off. Lights. TV. Microwave clock. Gone. I lit candles along the mantel. The warm glow should have felt cozy. Safe. But it didn't. Legacy came downstairs a few minutes later. Quiet. Barefoot again. Hair down this time. She handed me a glass of wine without a word. Sat on the other end of the couch like we'd been doing this for years. The kids were asleep. Alistair, as always, was working late. And I was suddenly aware of how close she was. Not physically, emotionally. Like we'd crossed into a space where pretending didn't work anymore. We sat there for a long time. Candlelight dancing. Rain whispering against the windows. I don't even remember how the conversation started. But at one point, I said, "You slipped into this house like you've been waiting to come back." She didn't deny it. She just stared at her wine, swirled it once, and said, "I wasn't just in town, Emmalynn. I asked Alistair if I could come." That stopped me. "Why?" I asked. My voice barely made it past my lips. Legacy exhaled. Her voice was quiet. Steady. Because I needed to face it. The part of myself I'd been trying to outgrow. I stared at her. What part? She didn't look at me when she said it. She looked past me, at the flickering candle. Alistair and I, it wasn't just business. The room didn't spin. My heart didn't race. That moment you imagine, the screaming, the dramatic gasp, the wine glass shattering, none of that happened. Instead, everything just went still. "It was a long time ago," she added, like that changed everything. My hands were in my lap, fingers gripping the hem of my sweater. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. "It ended," she said. "Because I realized what it was doing to me. What it was doing to you. Even if you didn't know." I finally looked at her. "He never told me." Legacy nodded. "He wouldn't. Because for him, it wasn't about breaking your heart. It was about protecting his ego." My voice cracked, just a little. "Why now? Why come back?" She met my eyes then, soft, not sorry. "Because I needed to see what I walked away from. And because I wanted to see you." I didn't speak. "He didn't just betray you, Emmalynn," she said. "He never deserved you." That sentence, it cracked something in me. Not because it was cruel. But because for the first tea. I lay in bed, eyes wide, ceiling fan spinning above me like it had somewhere to be. The room smelled like blown-out candles and red wine. My chest felt full and empty at the same time. I thought I'd feel rage. Or betrayal. Or humiliation. But what I felt was exhaustion. Not just from the lie. But from how long I'd been pretending not to notice. By morning, Legacy was gone. No note. No text. No goodbyes to the kids. Just her folded towel on the bathroom counter, and a faint scent of vanilla and regret still hanging in the guest room. Eliana asked where she went. I said she had to catch an early flight. Otto pouted, saying he wanted her to come back. I smiled. And then I walked into the pantry and cried into a roll of paper towels, because I didn't want them to see. I didn't confront Alistair. Not yet. He called that afternoon. Said he'd be home by the weekend. Said he was closing a deal in Denver. Said he missed us. I said, that's nice. And then I hung up and sat at the kitchen table with a pen in my hand. The last time I journaled, Otto was in diapers and Eliana still said hostable instead of hospital. All my old entries were listed. Groceries. Birthday reminders. Appointment times. Just proof that I was trying to hold everyone's life together. But that morning, I wrote something different. I wrote about the silence. The ache behind my ribs. The way Legacy looked at me like I was worth saving, even though she helped tear it all apart. I didn't hate her. And maybe that was the part that broke me the most. She wasn't the villain. She was just another woman who believed a man when he said he was empty. And when he was done with her, like he's slowly been done with me, he moved on like none of it mattered. She walked away on her own terms. And now, maybe I had to figure out how to do the same. Alistair came home on a Thursday evening. Same expensive coat. Same calm voice. Same half-smile that only ever reached his mouth, never his eyes. He brought gifts. A bag of overpriced toys for Otto. A beaded necklace for Eliana with a tag that still said airport exclusive. For me? Flowers. White lilies. Your favorite, he said, setting them on the counter like proof he remembered something. I've never liked lilies. I just said I did once, 12 years ago, in passing. But that's Alistair, memorizing facts, not feelings. He talked a lot. About delayed flights. A driver who got lost. A steakhouse in Denver that served the best ribeye he's ever had. He didn't ask how I'd been. Didn't ask how the kids were sleeping. Didn't ask about the night terrors or the wet beds or the storm. He didn't ask about Legacy. And I didn't bring her up. I just nodded. I smiled at the right times. I passed the salt. Refilled his wine. Played the role so well, I almost fooled myself. But that night, when the house went quiet, I didn't go straight to bed. I walked into Eliana's room first. She was already half asleep, clutching the new necklace like it meant something. I brushed her hair back and kissed her forehead. Then I checked on Otto. Covered him gently. Smoothed the blanket over his feet like Legacy had done. But this time, I didn't feel replaced. I felt present. Intentional. Then I made tea. Sat by the window. Watched the rain return in soft streaks, the kind that didn't scream or flood, just whispered. And I opened my journal. Not for a list. Not for a schedule. For a poem. It wasn't perfect. It didn't rhyme. But it was mine. It said. I used to wait for a door to open. Now I wait for nothing. Because even silence feels softer. When you know it's your own. I didn't scream. Didn't throw plates or demand answers or tear open old wounds looking for apologies I'd never get. I just made coffee. Same mug I always use. Same creaky cabinet. Same half scoop too much because I like it strong. But this time, the silence didn't press down on me. It wrapped around me like something I'd invited in. I sat at the table. Opened my phone. Scrolled through my contacts until I found her name, Legacy Robles. No drama. No last message. No what-ifs. Just, delete. Not out of hate. Not out of anger. Because that chapter was finished. And I didn't need to reread it. Later that week, I walked into a building with sliding glass doors and a waiting room that smelled like lavender and ink. First time, the receptionist asked. I nodded. She handed me a clipboard. I filled out my name, Emmalynn Andersen. Not Mrs. Not Alistair's wife. Just, me. I told my therapist the short version. That I'd been holding up a marriage by myself for years. That someone walked into my house and reminded me what being seen felt like, and it wasn't my husband. I told her I didn't want revenge. I wanted to stop feeling like a ghost in my own life. And I don't know. Maybe healing doesn't start with forgiveness or letting go. Maybe it starts with drinking your coffee while it's still hot. Or dancing barefoot in the hallway again. Or looking in the mirror without bracing yourself. The house is still quiet. Alistair talks less than ever. The kids are back in their own rhythms. The routine holds. But the quiet doesn't scare me anymore. It doesn't hum with loneliness or ache like an echo. Now, it just sounds like me. Speech balloon final question for you. What's the first thing you did when you finally stopped waiting for someone to change, and started choosing yourself instead? Backhand index pointing down. Drop your answer in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe if you've ever learned how to live again, even in the quiet.